Hello again, everybody. Time to make another video. Apologies for being late. I had classes. Also, I probably should have worn a sweatshirt today, given it's 15 degrees, but meh. I'll try that tomorrow. But let's get into the topic for the day. Instigation. Now, to instigate is basically to start something. You don't necessarily have to be the one to directly start, but basically you're the one who pushed in the direction that it's going to happen. So you can start something directly or indirectly. As an example, if I were to say, hey, you should rob that place, technically I did not directly start a robbery, but I did indirectly start it by telling someone else to do so. As so long as they follow my words, yes, I am the instigator in that situation. I know this may seem random, but with the ICE violence going on and the nonsense involving that, along with the misinformation and lies, deceits, other such nonsense, figured I might as well weigh in on this. So let's start off with a few things. One, how people instigate. For example, let's take violence. There is just direct instigation. For example, punching, kicking, stabbing, shooting, basically directly starting something. Then there's declaring intent. If you say, I'm going to stab you to someone's face, then you are starting something, because you are making a declaration of what you're going to do, and so it will eventually lead to here, therefore it is starting it. Then, of course, there's taunting. For example, saying, try me, or see what happens, after someone gets into any level of altercation with you. If you say that someone should try it, you are effectively saying, go ahead. You are pushing for something to start, directly or indirectly. And so it is a way of instigation. Then there's telling/directing. Basically, if you tell someone to do something, like beat that guy up, steal that thing, etc., you are instigating the later action. And this is all important when it comes to real-world scenarios because, for example, I haven't done much research on the recent guy who died, but I did do a bit into Renee Good's situation. Let's take her situation and her death as an example. So you have a lady in her car, right? She goes to park over here. A cop has already gone around and is now in front of where the vehicle would be. The wife is about here. Mrs. Good is there. And there's a third officer going up. Yes? So, in this situation, the wife says, drive. Specifically, she says, drive, baby, drive. Now, given what comes later with the car going up into the officer and hitting him, that would be considered instigation because it is telling or directing someone to do an action. The wife of Mrs. Good, I don't know if she changed her name or not, haven't checked that much because frankly I don't care about the exact names, just positions and relative things because again, the name itself does not matter here. Renee Good could have been named Adam Smith or something, and it would not change the situation at hand. But, importantly, by instigating, you start it. You are considered the responsible party. And this is important not just for situations like Mrs. Good, but also for robbery, for fights, and just disagreements as a whole. The instigator is the one starting the conflict. all these can have instigators, and they are the ones who started. Needless to say, that's very important, especially as far as the law is concerned. Because sure, with a disagreement, the instigator may have to apologize, they may have to be the one to put the first foot forward when it comes to mending the situation. But robberies, assaults, murders, etc., anything that's actually legally punishable, the instigator is very important. One, because if you're the instigator, you don't have the right to self-defense. If you are the one who starts a conflict, you do not get to say, I was defending myself, because you are the one who created the conflict and thus the threatening situation in the first place. 2, if you instigate something and something happens that's a crime as a result of the instigation, you are held liable for that. So, for example, let's say a robbery. There's you and another person, and you say, rob X. Well, if they go out and do it, and then die as a result, guess what? You are held liable. That is just reality. And so this is very important. Taking again the Renee Good situation, if these words can be proven to have been the ones inciting Mrs. Good to engage in illegal action, hitting an officer of the law, she could be held responsible for Mrs. Good's actions and the resulting death that came from them, specifically Mrs. Good's death. And so you see why this is important. Technically, Mrs. Good's wife could very well be held responsible for that death, just as the robber could be held responsible if this person dies. That is just how our law system works, and it makes some sense on the basis of if you start something, you are punished for it, and those who follow are in your hands. Thus, you are liable when things happen to them as you are the responsible party. But it also means you cannot basically plead to not knowing what's going to happen. If you start something knowingly, and it can be proved that you knew what would happen if you did it, then there is no question you are responsible, fundamentally. In Mrs. Good's case, that would mean her death would be on the wife and not the officers, because the officer technically did nothing illegal initially. He walked around, checked plates, which, by the way, the wife specifically said that they don't change plates specifically, as opposed to those who do, which I am fairly certain that is a big no-no when it comes to police enforcement, and then walked around. That is no crime. Especially when you consider he was, importantly, not in front of the car, straight on, when he got in front. In fact, if you actually watch the video from the officer's perspective, Mrs. Good is straight up pulling up in front of him, sorry. So she moves like this, he was here already, and so now she's lined up with him. And she drives towards him, hitting him. All this is important when analyzing this case in particular, but also other cases like it. The officer did nothing wrong initially, in terms of the law. Checking things, not legal, especially if that person is considered a potential harasser or a person otherwise hindering operations. Mrs. Good drove towards and even hit said person. Even if we want to argue that shooting her was a mistake, even if you want to do that, the officer cannot be held liable for defending himself as a punishment. If the instigator is her or her, that is on them as they started the conflict. Every defender in this situation would have rights to self-defense. As such, they would be allowed to defend themselves. Just as you cannot kill someone while committing a robbery, but they can kill you because they are defending their property. The person liable does not claim any right to kill another in defense of their own life, because they are the one who put it in danger in the first place. Even if you argue the officers did something stupid, which they may well have, that does not change what instigation is. That does not change who started it, nor does it change how things work. All in all, it is good to remember that. If someone, and it could be anything, it could be minor, like just stealing, it could be major, like nearly killing someone or hitting them. Regardless of what it is or the nature of it, the reality is the instigator is the one who starts. The instigator is the one responsible. They are liable. And thus, they hold, fundamentally, all of the responsibility, or at the very least the majority, when it comes to how things go down. Certainly, malpractice and poor behavior on the part of the defenders, for example, if in the process of defending yourself you end up destroying extra property that wasn't needed, can certainly be shown. But the one starting it does not get to claim he went too far in terms of defending himself, or she went too far in terms of defending herself, because they're the one who put them in danger in the first place. They're the ones who started the problem. That is how the law works. That is how most people work. You wouldn't say a person who started punching people gets to suddenly complain when a haymaker is thrown back at them, would you? That's silly. No, you wouldn't do that. And so, fundamentally, that is how things work. If you agree or not, feel free to comment below. If you want to insult me, go right on ahead. Frankly, I've heard worse. Enjoy, and have a good day. Goodbye.